Hey guys, welcome to Ellie's Toy Chest. Today we will be making the cake from Frozen Fieber, which is the short that's going on with Cinderella, and I'm going to go through some of the things that you're going to need in order to make this. You will need 3 layers of prepared cake in each the 6, 8, 10, and 12 inch round cake pans, iced blue, and I'm going to show you some tips and tricks as we go, but you'll need them already iced blue, and I'll show you some of the tips that I've gotten through, but first I'm going to go through some of the things that you'll need. So, you will need a cake marker. This is a garland marker. You'll need one of these, royal blue, and also lemon yellow. I used dark cocoa candy melts. You could also use mega M&Ms. And then I reversed it on the smaller ones. I used mini M&Ms. But you could also use chocolate chips, just regular chocolate chips if you happen to have chocolate chips. You will need golden, these aren't sprinkles, they're sugar pearls. You will need golden sugar pearls. And then also, you will need about 2 pounds of fondant. I used a little bit of this one, the Buff one, and I prefer the Buff brand fondant, but I didn't have any more, so I used the Wilton. It takes a little bit longer to set, so that's why I didn't prefer it for decorations. It'd probably be a lot better for cakes, for rolling for cakes and stretching, but it was just a little too soft for me for what I wanted to do. So that's some of what you will need. We will go ahead and get started with the decorating. And I'll probably show what you need at the end so you don't have to watch the boring stuff first. But I'll try to make a list and attach it so you have it. You will also need a number 1, 2, or 3 tip. It's just the writing tip. So it's just a circle to attach to your bag, or if you just get white icing already made for writing, you will need a circle tip, and then also either a star or a clamshell tip. If you buy in the supermarket, you can buy them where they have 4 tips. That will probably work just fine for you. You will always want to make sure that you butter and flour, oil and flour your pan, just like that. And what I wanted to show you was the trick that I used when I did not have the bake even strips. What I did is a flour nail. You get them at Michael's or Amazon. I believe you can even get them in the big box stores that sell cake decorating supplies. So this is my large 12-inch pan, and I had a little bit of trouble with making sure the cakes were all the way done. So when I put the flour nail in it and then put the batter on top, make sure that you oil and flour your nail as well. It worked out perfectly, baked all the way through, no muffin tops at the top, no domes, so it worked out really well. You just put it in as close to the center as you possibly can, and then pour your batter on in. Try to get it as even as you can, settle out, and that is how I did my cake. For my cake layers, after they were done, I went ahead and I just froze them. You could also refrigerate them, but I find it's easier to crumb coat them, which is when you just apply a small layer of icing to it before you apply your icing, so you don't get crumbs in your icing, the part you decorate. So I took them and I leveled them, and then I put them in the freezer. It makes the icing harden a little bit quicker, which works for me. So you just want to take your layers, crumb coat them, and then put your icing on, and then I'll show you a trick. So you will have 3 different size cakes that look something like this, hopefully a little bit smoother, but I deliberately didn't do this one so smooth so I could show you a really cool trick. I put them back in the fridge. They get to where you can touch them and you don't get a whole bunch on your hand. Paper towel. You need paper towel and wax paper for the trick. The paper towel on one side is a little bit smoother, and on the other side it has more decorations or indents. You want to pick the smoother side, and you just put it on the cake and you use your hand to smooth out the cake. You can also use your fondant tool smoother if you have one, but this works wonders, and you just try to make sure it doesn't get wrinkles in it. And as it warms up a little bit, it'll be easier to push the icing around and get it perfectly smooth. This is a really good way. This is a really good way to get sharp edges on your cake. If you're not used to doing this, you can get some really nice sharp edges on your cake. You pick it up, and it might look a little something like that. Do it a few more times, and then I always wax paper the top. I don't wax paper the sides, but I always put wax paper over the top, at least the one I'm going to decorate, because you don't want happy birthday or anything like that on a surface that isn't smooth. So what the wax paper does, and sometimes you have to put it back in the fridge. If it starts sticking to everything, you'll know it's time to put it back in the fridge or the freezer so it can firm up and you can get it exactly the way you want. But this is one of the tricks that I thought was really great and everyone should know. So wax paper and paper towels. How easy is that? I'm going to work on this and get it perfectly smooth, and then I'll show it to you again. So I have a whole bunch already made. I'm going to show you sunflowers, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make these for your cake decorating. Also, you will need to make some leaves, so go ahead and show you a leaf that you'll be making. So for your sunflowers, if you have a fondant roller, I would highly recommend using one of these. However, when I made mine, I did not use one. I just used either a rolling pin or any piece of wood or anything that's really cylindrical you can use. Maybe just a little bit more challenging, but definitely usable to roll out biscuits and stuff. Before, my mom's used a round cup, so don't fret if you don't have a fondant roller. You can use just about anything that you can roll crushed fondant that doesn't stick will work. So for the middle of the big sunflower, I use the dark cocoa melts that you can buy. I wanted to use the Mega M&Ms and just flip over the M&M side, but when I compared the two, I thought that for the bigger sunflower, the cocoa just looked better. So you will need to punch out 3 of these for each sunflower. If your fondant's really warm, you'll notice when you pull them apart, you'll get strings where it didn't come apart. One way to solve that is to punch it down and then have your hand come up underneath the fondant, if you can keep it where it was, and push up against the cutter and actually pull it away. So you don't have to pick it up off. You can actually flip it over. That's what I normally do, and then pull it away. The other thing you can do is let it sit a few minutes and get cooler, and you won't have as many little string. You see those? Those are stringy. So what I did for mine is I just let them sit a little bit longer, and as it gets harder, you'll get less of those. The only thing about leaving them there and pulling is you can deform the petals a little bit, which you don't want to do. If you get one that's a little stringy, just put that one on the bottom. That's what I did. And then the next ones, hopefully, are not as stringy. Put those over the top. In fact, I'd stretch to say, put your most perfect one on the top, and then just layer the not perfect ones on the bottom. So to me, see how it has the little strings? You can go through and just pull it, and that will help with them a little bit. But just letting the fondant sit a little bit longer before you do one will help it not do that. Because when you roll it, it gets warm and tacky. And I think that helps make the stringies, and then when you let it sit, it gets cool. If it happens to get too cold and not elastic enough for you to work with, put it in the microwave for 15 seconds. That'll work out really good. 10-second intervals is what you're supposed to do. So yes, do 10-second intervals. I'm gonna go ahead and re-roll this. I use wax paper underneath mine. It works really well for me. You can use cornstarch to roll it out, or also powdered sugar. A lot of people don't like powdered sugar because it absorbs back in, so it starts to stick more quickly. However, I really like using powdered sugar, but you can also use cornstarch, whatever you have. If you do not have a cutter to cut them out, find a similar pattern online and then just use an X-Acto knife or a regular knife. This one doesn't want to work on me, but just use an X-Acto knife like this, and you can use the wax paper over top of your pattern and just cut out the fondant. I do that for a lot of things. So now you have 3. And that will make 1 flower. So if you have a large table, what I would do, I would just go ahead and roll out a lot of fondant at one time and punch out a whole bunch of these. You will kind of want to try not to overlap the petals too much. So when you press down on them, you can see 3 different petals each way. That looks pretty good to me. So this is what it looks like before you put a center on it. Looks like that. And I will show you both centers. So we have Mega M&Ms, and then we also have chocolate, melting chocolate centers. If you use the middle daisy shape, if you use the Wilton cutters, you can use the Mega M&Ms, work out perfect. So if you press down, you'll see the flowers start to pop up a little bit, which is okay. That is with the Mega M&M. I like the Mega M&Ms because they give it a sheen. They're kind of shiny. They look very professional to me. However, to be closest to the cake as possible, I felt with the larger flowers, the centers were bigger for more proportion. So that is with the dark cocoa melting chocolate middle, which I like better for the large ones. Then for the small one, just roll out your fondant again. Grab your small cutter and do 3 of them. And you're just going to do the same thing. If you were doing this cake for a party, for a little girl, she would have a lot of fun punching out all the flowers probably and putting them together. So you could actually have her help, or maybe a sister help. So same technique for the sunflower. Try to make this as simple as possible. If you were really good, you could also use tips and icing and just pipe out flowers and put them in the freezer and then bring them out and do this. If your fondant is not warm, if you roll a whole bunch at one time and then try to put them together, you're going to want a pastry brush or a little new paintbrush to put water in between the layers on your flour so that they'll stick when you press them down. If you let them dry out and you don't do that, they will not stick together. The other trick I used is when they're not warm and I put them together, I take my icing and I put just a little bit of icing before I put the center on, so the center will kind of glue down into your flour. If you use the M&M, make sure you flip over the M&M part so it doesn't say M&M. And you could also use a chocolate chip. I like the M&Ms better, so that's what I used for all of mine. And then you just press down. And sometimes it pops up a little bit. I pressed that one a little too hard, I broke it. And that's what your little tiny flower looks like. Now we're going to move on to leaves. Let's see if this is pliable enough. It is. For the leaves, I used cardboard, and I just cut out cardboard that I thought looked like a leaf. So again, don't forget to put your little bit of icing. I'm going to go get some icing so I can show you that real quick. Otherwise, your chocolate will be falling out. So you just want to take your icing bag, put some icing in the middle there, and then put it back on. And then I let mine sit for about 8 hours so they would get nice and firmed up. And then you don't have that problem with the middles falling out if you put the icing on them, and then they get hard and easier to handle. They don't move around on you. And I also did it for the little flowers as well. So the cardboard I took and I just cut a few leaves, and then I found a leaf I thought was kind of pretty. And I just kept using the same leaf. Tracing the one leaf. You let it get hard, it's easier to do. If you had a fondant cutter or some other cutter, cookie cutter, that looked like a leaf, that would also work perfectly. And they also make fondant cutters. However, I did not have one when I started the project, so this is what I used. I didn't have to do this on all of them, just a few of them. Round up the edges. I just wanted to show you. You want to make sure you have something to go by when you're doing a cake. And you'll notice about 8 of 16 the leaves go one way and the other leaves go the other way. So you just would want to be careful that when you do this, you flip over at least 8 leaves to do the middle section that has flowers on it. Then I just took my white icing. You want to twist it and then try to make it as smooth a line as possible. That one's much better. And don't let the edges, just like that. Smooth lines, make a leaf. And just take the edges off. And that is your leaf. And so I have about 16 going one way and then 8 or so going the other way, and we hope that's enough to line up on the cakes. So this is what your layers should look like, possibly a little bit better, all smoothed out. And then this is the garland maker. You just put it together like so, and it's going to make the garlands around the bottom for you, so you don't have to think so hard about it. If you have a piece of string, you can use it to go a ribbon around the cake to see how many inches you have, and then try to make your garland fit an equal amount of time, so you won't have space at the back of your cake between the last two garlands because you didn't have enough room for the last one. I'm going to go ahead and do that now, so here we go. And if you do like I just did, where you just did one and you realize that it is way too low, then you can switch it up and see if you can't make it a shorter, rounder garland. Okay, let's try it again. And you just would go back and cover that up. Then you just want to trace your lines with your icing bag. Keep the air bubbles out as best as you can. Trace the dots. Try to have it go as smoothly as possible. And it'll look something like that, except a little bit smoother. Get nervous in front of the camera, so I'm going to cut it back off to do the rest. Now you're just going to want to take gold beads and put them at the tip where the garlands meet. And then you also want to put a baby sunflower in the middle of each one. So gold bead. Tweezers would work better than your hands probably, because you're going to get your hands a little messy and get icing on your sugar pearls, or pour the icing off with your finger. So gloves maybe and tweezers would work really good. And I'm going to show you putting the baby sunflowers in the middle. Just try to figure out where the middle is and push your sunflower in the middle. And find out where the middle is and push the middle one in. I'm not aligning these perfectly. I'm just eyeballing it, which is okay with me. You could measure it out with your garland if you really wanted to, but that's about what it's going to look like. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of the cake. So for the scrolls, what I did was I took an oven liner. I took an oven liner and I just trimmed off the bottom of it, and then I shaped it the way I wanted it to be, and then I just used that to press into the cake to make the scrolls. That way all the scrolls would be at least similar, if not exactly the same, so they're all similar and look more professional that way. Okay, so for the next 3 layers, it's a little different than the first layer. You have large sunflowers and leaves instead of having small sunflowers and scrolls. So just going to go ahead and get my leaves together so they're all going the same way. So there is a look at layer number 2. That's what it looked like. We just alternated the sunflowers and the leaves. So if you wanted to put some fancy white icing tying the leaves to the sunflowers, you can do that. I haven't decided if I'm going to do that on that layer yet or not. Also, another tip for most people, half a bag of icing is the most comfortable to hold in their hand and exert continued pressure. If you fill it up all the way, you're going to have a hard time holding it. So my best advice is only fill the icing bag that you have halfway full, and then it's easier to exert an even amount of pressure as you go along. I wanted to take the time here to say that this is a massive cake, and you may just want to do the first 2 layers. If it's for a kid's birthday or something, there's no need to have all 4 layers. The other option you have is to pour one of your cake batters, a portion of it, into like a 13 by 9 or 8 by 8 pan. And then these are lovely. These are for biscuit cutting, but if you buy a whole set of them, you get quite a few of them in the set, and then you could make your top layer with that one, or you could make a whole bunch of layers with the little tiny ones. So that is the idea if you don't need as big of a cake. So this is the finished cake. I wouldn't recommend that anybody who doesn't do well with sharp objects make a template out of the oven liner or use an X-Acto knife, but other than that, pretty much anybody could do this. If you wanted a really easy way, I would get the fondant and then the flour cutters and go buy a cake, make some blue icing, put it over top of it, and then do the flowers and the leaves, and that would be a really quick, fun thing to do. Please let me know if you like this video or not, and any other things I could help you with. Also, this cake is for Grandpa. Surprise, Grandpa! And my daughter's birthday is coming up, so I am either going to do a carousel cake or a My Little Pony cake. Please let me know which tutorial you would rather watch, a My Little Pony or a carousel cake. And if you need anything else, let me know. And then also, if you have any tips for me, I would be more than happy to hear from you. Thank you for watching my first cake tutorial. If you'd like to see any other cakes, please message me below. I had a lot of fun doing this. I hope if you decide to do it, you'll let me know how it turns out. Thank you for watching Ellie's Toy Chest. Like, I think probably either one of those, I had to take it down to go in the fridge, so I think either one of those would be really pretty cakes. Just 2 tier instead of 4.